In 1941, as a result of the unprovoked attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States found itself gearing up for war on two fronts. As men and boys went off to fight the war, those who were left behind rallied their efforts to fight the Axis in any way they could. As Rosie picked up her riveter and headed for the shipyards, the Walt Disney Studios found themselves gearing up in a completely different way. They were to create training and propaganda films for the U.S. military and the U.S. government. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines propaganda as the spreading of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, cause, or person. The propaganda churned out by the Walt Disney Studios would serve to train the troops, educate the public, and boost morale in a very dark time. The studios found themselves entering into World War II soon after Pearl Harbor, when they were invaded by approximately 500 members of the U.S. Army who took over the facility as an optical repair shop for anti-aircraft guns. Almost immediately, contracts began to roll in from the Army and the Navy for the creation of training films for the recruits in boot camp, those heading off to war. Also, soon thereafter, the Walt Disney Studios was commissioned to create its first piece of insignia art, and ended up creating more than 1,200 pieces of insignia and nose art through war's end. Also, the studios were commissioned to create civilian education films, such as The Spirit of 43, in which Donald Duck implores the civilian population to pay their taxes. Interestingly enough, as a result of this film, a Gallup poll revealed that more than 37% of respondents indicated that the film was instrumental in getting them to actually pay their taxes. By the war's end, more than 90% of the Walt Disney Studios employees were devoted to the creation of these propaganda and training films. The Walt Disney Studios aided the war effort in several important ways. First of all was the creation of the training films for the Navy and the Army for the recruits that they were bringing in and sending off to war. Second was the creation of the insignia and the patches, the nose art, which we discussed before. The first one of these was created for the Navy for their new mosquito boat program. Third was the propaganda shorts for boosting morale and demoralizing the Axis. And fourth were those public education films such as Paying Your Taxes in the Spirit of 43, and Mickey and Minnie talking about conserving cooking oil, and many, many others. The studios were recognized in several ways for the creation of the films, the insignia, the propaganda that they made, but the most significant of these was probably the 1943 Oscar for Best Animated Short, which was won by a film called Der Fuhrer's Face. Also, in 1983, interestingly enough, Donald Duck was promoted from private to the rank of sergeant in the U.S. Army and was honorably discharged. By war's end, the Walt Disney Studios had churned out more than 400,000 feet of film, 200,000 feet in 1942 and 1943, 5 times the amount that they had ever churned out in peacetime. Between training and propaganda films, military insignia, comic books, and more, Walt Disney Studios played a tremendous effort to the success of military and propaganda efforts in World War II. The efforts of these dedicated Americans cannot be overestimated. World War II was won at home as much as abroad. We have the freedoms we have today because failure was never an option. People united to face the Fuhrer and the Axis powers head on.